My name is Kevin Hyatt. I am here with Laura Roddy and Ben Pansloff as part of the Creighton Business Ethics class, and one of their assignments for creation of a video for ethics in business. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of my experience with the Enron Corporation based out of Houston, Texas. I spent about 18 years with the organization, cradle to grave, so to speak. I was there as part of the unregulated business formation between InterNorth and Houston Natural Gas. Stayed with the organization through the formation of Enron and then through its demise and bankruptcy in 2001. I've got some interesting first-hand experience both with the company and post-company bankruptcy, having served on the employee committee, creditors committee that was it was established by the U.S. Trustee's Office and the bankruptcy judge in New York. Ben, you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, going ahead. One of the first questions that I have is that what pump and dump was. And when we watched the video, the smartest guys in the room, they talked about the traders that were pumping the market up. They were trying to get the price up, but it was what would you say?
You're referring to the electricity pricing, run up and source of supply scarcity in California. In that time frame, Enron was a fairly big marketer, both from the generation standpoint and having owned generation plants, as well as an electricity marketer regulated by the state of California. And there were a number of parties who were similarly situated. Enron spent a considerable amount of time and lobbying money working with the California Public Utility Commission and the individual investor-owned utilities, IOUs, to help create that quote-unquote free market enterprise for electricity deregulation in California. We were very large advocates for creating as free a market economy in that retail space as we possibly could. But at the end of the day, the Public Utility Commission and the bureaucrats associated with the CPUC saw fit to form a set of rules that created the ability to game the system based on inputting electricity either through a generation basis or from buying electricity on the market and turning around and selling it. There was a confluence of events, both weather events and market events that kind of came together as a perfect storm in California that created a shortage of supply and an ability to buy and sell electricity at significantly historical prices. Enron was not the only one complicit in this, but one of the largest and high-profile entities that was complicit in this. At the end of the day, did they follow the rules as established by the CPUC? I would say yes. The intent of the rules as established did not consider the effects of the marketplace and what happened in this perfect storm event. The rules as established created the ability to game the system, and people who saw that opportunity gamed the system. Were they following the rules as established? Yes. Were they following the intent of the rules? No. Were they ethically, morally wrong in what they did? Yes. But at the end of the day, they really followed the rules as established by the regulatory authorities. There were individuals, tried, some convicted, penalties paid. I can't remember whether a whole lot of people served time in prison for any of that. I don't know that anybody did. But it was a huge economic bust to the state of California.
The next question is, there was a lot of separate accounts that Enron started, and they did these separate accounts to throw off their balance sheet and kind of, I would say, skew their assets of their company?
Not so much skew the assets as skew the liabilities. As what you're talking about is the SPEs, or special purpose entities, that all had interesting names. Darth Vader being one, Star Wars being another. We set up, the company, in order to hide a non-performing or poorly performing asset, took that asset and segregated it off of Enron's books through a special purpose entity, an SPE, following the rules of the accounting codes and FASB and the SEC. They created these special purpose entities of which to legally get it off Enron's books, there had to be a de minimis amount of outside investors in that asset, in that venture. And one of the prime architects of this was Andy Fastow, the CFO, during part of my tenure at the company. And Andy and his minions created these SPEs and then had a family and friends network of outside investors take again a de minimis amount of interest and invest their money so that that asset, that poor performing asset, could be taken off of Enron's books, off of Enron's liabilities, and held off balance sheet. And it was it was a way to hide losses from the street, hide losses from the investors. In most cases, the SPEs probably met the letter of the law in terms of what they were doing. Not all cases, but a lot of the cases. But at the end of the day, it was morally and ethically wrong what they were doing in trying to hide the actual liabilities that Enron was wearing on its books on a daily basis.
Do you think a work environment can influence your values or trump your ethical beliefs?
It can if you let it. I had a good friend who worked for the company who was involved in the Nigerian barge deal, and that was a situation where we had some assets that were electric generation assets on floating barges, and you put diesel fuel onto the barges and create electricity, and we literally took them up and down the Central American coast and plugged them into ports that needed excess electricity, and you could make electricity. At one point in time, the assets weren't being used. They were worth a considerable amount of money, and we did not have a performance contract to put them to use. And one of the guys I was familiar with was tasked with taking those assets off the books, those non-performing assets, and he set up a structure with one of the investment banks where the bank would buy the assets, and this is before year-end close of 1 year, and then sell those assets back to the company in the following year at an agreed-upon predetermined margin for the bank. That's a sham sale, and it was in effect taking liabilities off the company's books and generating revenue associated with it, and then turning around and buying those assets back. This gentleman was in my opinion, a Boy Scout. He was a father of 4 kids, upstanding church member, Boy Scout leader, the whole 9 yards. And he got told, and he was a CPA too, he got told, make this transaction happen. We need this to happen. Your bonus depends on it, and oh, by the way, your job depends on it. Make this happen. And he followed orders and made it happen, and went to jail subsequent to the Enron bankruptcy for what he did. So yes, can it influence your behavior? Yes, if you let it.
Have your ethical views played a part in any of your career decisions?
More so post-Enron than before. It makes you, having lost an order of magnitude, multiples of 6-digit figures in 401k and stock value and option value, watching all that disappear with the demise of the company really makes you stop and think where you're going to go next and who you're going to go to work for. Because there were a lot of Enron-like entities out there who everybody wanted to be like Enron, to be as big as Enron, and trade and make money like Enron, and paid the price because of Enron, because of what they were doing. You don't have to go far in the energy business. It's literally no more than 2 degrees of separation before you find somebody you worked with or knew in the business in that time frame. So you look at what jobs you're taking or considering, and you look at the guys who are running those organizations, and you look at where they came from, what they went through, and how they were impacted as part of your consideration for going to work for that organization. It's integrity and ethics are pretty big in this business. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to blow it. And that's credibility you never get back. Andy Fastow was working as a law clerk in the firm in Houston that, defended him in court. That's his life for the rest of his life. Nobody will touch that with a 10-foot pole. So yes, 5 minutes can ruin it.
One more question. Do you think the CEO of a company and their ethical beliefs can basically trickle down and cause the rest of the company to behave in a certain way? Or
Most definitely. Leadership in an organization is important, and the ethical leadership is exceptionally important. You look at what Jeff Skilling did in the Enron organization, and his belief, and this is documented, his belief was, it's not my job to follow the rules and follow the restrictions placed upon me by government and accounting boards. It's their job to catch me doing something wrong. I believe he truly believed that, and that attitude was pervasive throughout a lot, not all, but a lot of the leadership structure. And there was intense competition for performance bonuses and promotions and stock option grants that created a very perverse organization, again, not everywhere, but a lot of significant places in the corporation, that it just permeated throughout. And it was wrong. And it was a wrong way to conduct business. It was a wrong way to bring in new kids into the business, new associates and new analysts and new grad school students, and teach them the wrong way to make money.
how could you correct it?
That's a wholesale change at the top. You bite that bullet and you suffer that pain, and it's going to be painful if you let it go too far, and they did. But everybody was enamored with that stock price and that stock value. Do you let that go? Do you sacrifice that at the risk of making a better organization? Not many companies would do that. So you try and prevent it at the top, and hire quality people with an ethical and moral backbone to stand up to it. There weren't a whole lot of guys. A lot of guys who wanted to stand up to it just left. Didn't want to be there anymore. It was much easier to lead the organization than try and stem the tide of change.
And why did it take the lady who whistleblowed? How come it took so long for her to come out and do that? And why didn't it happen earlier? It
was the accounting shenanigans that were going on. It was a very, very small cadre of people under Andy Fastow's control, and there were a number of folks at the top, a number probably 10 or less, who knew what was going on, but did not have the backbone to say, this is wrong. This is wrong on many levels. They were just not able or willing to stand up to Skilling and Fastow and stop doing it. There were a number of regulations and rules put in place prior to any of this happening that were not followed. Had those rules been followed to the letter like it was structured, a lot of this would not have happened. But then again, you would not have had the stock price run up in the corporation and the perceived market value in Enron. People weren't willing to walk away from that.
Yeah, they didn't want to lose their jobs.
They didn't want to lose jobs. They didn't want to lose their pensions and their 401ks, and looking at 6-7 figures in your 401k, you're going to watch that melt down, and they did anyway.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, they did.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin.
You bet. My pleasure.